Imagine battling freezing oceans with nothing but rope and wood, and somehow staying warm. Pirates had a shocking trick no one remembers, a method so simple yet so hidden it could rewrite everything you thought about surviving the cold at sea. When you think about pirates staying warm, your mind probably jumps to thick coats and fancy gear. Wrong. These seafaring rogues had a trick that would make your grandmother proud. They layered up like champions, turning themselves into walking onions of survival. Pirates didn't have REI catalogs or fancy thermal underwear. What they had was pure common sense and whatever cloth they could get their hands on. They started with lightweight linen shirts against their skin. Smart move, really. Linen breathes, but still traps that crucial first layer of body heat. Then came the magic. Wool shirts, wool vests, maybe even wool stockings if they were lucky enough to pilfer some from a merchant vessel. Wool was their secret weapon because it kept them warm even when soaking wet. And trust me, everything was always wet on those ships. Sea spray doesn't take holidays. The outer layer, whatever they could find. Leather jerkins, heavy canvas jackets, sometimes even stolen fancy coats from wealthy passengers. Pirates weren't picky about fashion. Function beat style every single time. But here's where things get interesting. Too many layers turn these agile sailors into slow-moving marshmallows. Try climbing rigging when you're wearing half your wardrobe. Not happening. So pirates had to strike that perfect balance between staying warm and staying alive during ship battles. They got creative with timing, too. During calm weather, they'd pile on every piece of fabric they owned. When action called, they'd strip down to essentials faster than a teenager getting ready for a date. Well, maybe not that fast. The layering system evolved as pirates traveled different routes. Caribbean raiders might need just 2 layers, while those crazy enough to sail near Iceland, they'd wear everything they owned and probably steal more at the next port. What's really fascinating is how this rough-and-tumble approach actually worked better than many modern systems. No zippers to break, no synthetic materials to tear, just layer after layer of natural fibers doing exactly what they'd done for centuries, keeping humans from freezing to death. Pirates even developed their own little tricks within the layering game. They'd tuck shirts into pants, wrap scarves around necks multiple times, and stuff extra cloth into boots. Every gap meant lost heat, and lost heat meant lost life. The best part? When they captured a ship with wealthy passengers, pirates would raid the wardrobes like kids in a candy store. Nothing quite like fresh layers to keep spirits high on those endless, freezing ocean nights. Speaking of keeping warm below deck, pirates had another ingenious solution that involved a dangerous gamble with fire itself. Pirates had a deadly balancing act on their hands. They needed fire to survive the bone-chilling cold, but one spark in the wrong place could turn their wooden ship into a floating funeral pyre. Talk about playing with fire, literally. The galley became the heart of pirate warmth strategy. These small cooking fires weren't just for preparing hardtack and salt pork. Smart pirates kept them burning low and steady, creating pockets of blessed heat below deck. The trick was maintaining just enough flame to ward off hypothermia without creating an inferno. But here's where it gets tricky. Wood and fire don't exactly make great roommates on a ship tossing around in rough seas. Pirates developed some surprisingly clever workarounds. They'd surround their fire pits with metal containers or stones, anything to contain those rebellious flames. Some crews even fashioned crude exhaust systems using spare canvas and rope to funnel smoke away from living quarters. The smoke problem was no joke. Ever tried sleeping in a room full of wood smoke? It's like camping with your crazy uncle who never learned how to build a proper fire. Pirates dealt with this by creating makeshift ventilation, often just strategic holes or canvas tubes that directed the worst of it topside. Well, the really experienced crews figured out fuel management too. They'd burn only the driest wood scraps, saving the green or damp timber for emergencies. Dry wood meant less smoke and more consistent heat. Some pirates even collected whale oil or animal fat when they could get it. These burned cleaner and longer than wood. Then there's the timing aspect most people never consider. Pirates couldn't keep fires roaring 24/7. They'd bank the coals during the day and stoke them back to life when temperatures dropped at night. This routine required someone to tend the fire constantly, usually rotating the duty among crew members. The whole setup transformed the lower decks into something resembling a medieval tavern. Smoky, warm, and packed with rough characters huddled around flickering flames. Not exactly luxury accommodations, but it beat freezing to death in your hammock. And the weird part is, these floating fireplaces actually worked pretty well. The combination of contained flames and the ship's natural insulation created surprisingly cozy spaces. Pirates would gather around these warm spots to share stories, plan raids, or just thaw their frozen bones after hours on deck. But keeping warm was just one piece of the puzzle. Even with fires crackling below deck, pirates still faced the challenge of staying comfortable during those long, frigid nights at sea. When you're sleeping on a freezing ship in the middle of nowhere, your bunk becomes your sanctuary. Pirates knew this better than anyone. They turned their cramped sleeping quarters into cozy burrows that would make a hibernating bear jealous. Straw was their go-to base layer, cheap, available, and surprisingly effective at trapping air. They'd stuff it everywhere, under blankets, around the sides of their bunks, even in their boots before sleeping. Well, the smart ones did anyway. The straw worked like nature's bubble wrap, creating tiny pockets of warm air that kept the bone-chilling cold at bay. But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates didn't just grab any old blankets. Wool was their weapon of choice, and for good reason. Unlike cotton, wool keeps you warm even when it's soaking wet. Perfect for a life where sea spray is your constant companion. They'd layer multiple woolen blankets, creating what we'd recognize today as serious insulation technology. Then there's the fur situation. Whenever pirates captured a ship carrying livestock or raided coastal settlements, animal pelts became premium bedding material. Bearskins, seal hides, even sheep fleeces, anything with natural insulation properties ended up lining their bunks. Makes sense, right? If it kept the animal warm in harsh conditions, it could do the same for a pirate. The weird part is how they arranged everything. Pirates discovered that creating a nest effect worked better than just piling blankets on top. They'd build up the sides of their sleeping area, forming walls that blocked drafts and trapped body heat, like sleeping inside a warm cocoon, except this cocoon happened to be floating on an icy ocean. But let's not forget the biggest challenge these seafaring rogues faced. Keeping anything dry on a wooden ship was nearly impossible. Moisture crept in everywhere, turning cozy bedding into damp, miserable messes overnight. Pirates developed a rotation system, always having backup bedding ready while the wet stuff dried near the galley fires. The clever ones even created drainage systems in their bunks. They'd angle their sleeping platforms slightly, allowing water to run off instead of pooling where they slept. Simple physics, but it made the difference between a decent night's rest and slowly freezing to death. Their bunk modifications were so effective that naval architects later borrowed these design ideas for official military vessels. Who would have thought that pirates were accidentally pioneering maritime sleeping technology? However, even the most perfectly insulated bunk couldn't solve every problem pirates faced in freezing conditions. They needed something more immediate, more portable, something they could literally wear on their backs. Pirates weren't exactly known for their environmental consciousness, but when it came to staying warm, they turned recycling into an art form. Those animal hides from livestock they'd liberated during raids, well, they became the difference between surviving another frozen night and becoming a popsicle with a wooden leg. The beauty of animal hides lay in their double duty, like getting a 2-for-1 deal at the tavern, except instead of ale, you got warmth and waterproofing. Cowhides, sheepskins, even the occasional goat pelt got transformed into makeshift jackets, blankets, and boot linings. Think of it as nature's own Gore-Tex, minus the fancy marketing budget. But here's where it gets interesting and messy. Curing hides on a rolling ship wasn't exactly a pleasant affair. The smell alone could knock a grown man overboard. Pirates had to scrape, salt, and treat these skins while dealing with seasickness and limited fresh water. Makes you appreciate that leather jacket in your closet a bit more, doesn't it? The process required genuine skill, though. A poorly cured hide would rot, stink up the entire ship, and leave you colder than before. Smart pirates learned to stretch hides properly, using whatever tools they could fashion from ship materials. Knives, hooks, even repurposed weapons became hide processing equipment. Each pelt told its own story, too. A thick Scottish Highland cowhide might have come from a raid near the Hebrides, while exotic skins hinted at tropical adventures. Pirates were essentially walking museums of their maritime conquests. except instead of displaying artifacts, they wore them. The waterproofing aspect proved crucial during those brutal North Atlantic crossings. Rain and sea spray could soak through wool and cotton, but a well-prepared hide shed water like a duck's back. Pirates would layer these treated skins over their regular clothes, creating a surprisingly effective barrier against the elements. Some crews got creative with their hide usage. Larger pelts became communal blankets for the shared warmth below deck. Smaller pieces got sewn into hat linings or wrapped around feet inside boots. One particularly resourceful captain reportedly used a massive bull hide as a windbreak on deck during storms. The irony? These seafaring outlaws were practicing sustainability centuries before anyone coined the term. Nothing went to waste aboard a pirate ship, least of all something that could keep you alive in freezing temperatures. Then there's the matter of what they put in their bellies to generate heat from within. Nothing beats the bone-chilling cold of the Atlantic quite like a belly full of fire. Pirates knew this secret long before anyone understood the science behind it. Their weapon of choice? Grog. This wasn't your fancy cocktail, it was pure liquid warmth mixed with survival instinct. Rum, water, a splash of lime juice, and sugar created a concoction that could thaw frozen fingers faster than you could say, "Shiver me timbers." The alcohol dilated blood vessels, sending warmth racing through their bodies like a personal heating system. Smart, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates didn't just drink their warmth, they ate it too. Salted pork became their best friend during frigid voyages. These chunks of preserved meat packed enough calories to fuel a small furnace inside their stomachs. Think of it like throwing logs on an internal fire. Each bite generated heat through digestion, keeping their core temperature stable when the ocean spray felt like ice daggers. Then there were the hardtack biscuits. Sure, they were harder than a miser's heart and about as flavorful as cardboard, but they served a purpose. Chewing these rock-solid crackers required serious jaw work, which got blood pumping and generated body heat. Plus, they lasted forever without spoiling, perfect for long, cold journeys. Pirates also discovered something modern nutritionists preach today. Spicy food creates warmth. When they could get their hands on hot peppers during raids in warmer climates, they'd hoard them like treasure. These fiery little gems triggered a heat response that spread through their entire body. Capsaicin, the compound that makes peppers hot, literally tricks your body into thinking it's warming up. The clever part? They'd make massive communal stews in the galley. Everyone gathered around the cooking pot, sharing both the warmth from the fire and the heat-generating meal. It was like a medieval hot pot party, except with more eye patches and significantly worse table manners. Coffee beans, when they could steal them, became another secret weapon. The caffeine increased heart rate and circulation, while the hot liquid provided immediate internal heating. Pirates were basically the first people to understand that a good cup of joe could save your life. Well, speaking of staying warm, pirates had to get creative about more than just food and drink. Their ships themselves needed some serious modifications to keep the cold Atlantic winds from turning everyone into popsicles. When it comes to staying warm at sea, most people think about thick coats and hot drinks, but pirates knew something that modern sailors are just rediscovering. The ship itself was their best defense against the cold. These weren't the massive galleons you see in Hollywood movies. Real pirate vessels were built low and compact, hugging the water like a crafty old cat avoiding a thunderstorm. The lower profile meant less surface area for those brutal ocean winds to pummel. Smart, right? But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates deliberately chose smaller ships not just for speed during their business ventures, but because heating a cramped space takes far less effort than warming a palace. Think of it like the difference between heating a studio apartment versus a mansion. Same principle, different century. The construction details revealed just how clever these seafaring rogues really were. They kept portholes to an absolute minimum. Sure, this made the below-deck areas darker than a tax collector's heart, but it also meant fewer gaps for cold air to sneak through. Every opening was a potential highway for frigid drafts, and pirates weren't about to roll out the welcome mat for hypothermia. Their ship designs followed what we now call thermal efficiency principles, though they probably just called it not freezing our backsides off. The compact sleeping quarters meant body heat from the crew could actually warm the space. It was like a floating sleeping bag that happened to have cannons. Well, there was a downside to all this coziness. Living in such tight quarters meant privacy was rarer than an honest politician. The air quality could get pretty questionable too. Imagine being sealed in a wooden box with 30 unwashed sailors for months. Not exactly a luxury cruise experience. These practical ship modifications influenced naval architecture for generations. Maritime engineers eventually realized that pirates had accidentally stumbled onto some brilliant design principles. Who knew that people primarily motivated by treasure could also be inadvertent innovators in marine engineering? The turtle-like design philosophy extended to the hull shape too. Rounded, low-sitting vessels cut through waves more efficiently and presented less resistance to crosswinds. Less resistance meant the ship moved faster and crew members weren't constantly battling to stay upright against howling gales. And the weird part is, modern yacht designers are going back to some of these same principles for cold weather sailing. But ship design was only part of their survival strategy. The really clever part was how pirates used their knowledge of the ocean itself to stay one step ahead of nature's frozen fury. While most pirates stumbled around icy waters like penguins on roller skates, the smartest ones figured out nature's own heating system. They learned to read ocean currents like a treasure map, except the treasure was staying alive instead of freezing to death. Think about it this way. If you're driving in winter, you'd probably take the highway with heated rest stops rather than the scenic route through a blizzard. Pirates did exactly that, but with water. They discovered that certain ocean currents carried warm water from tropical regions, creating liquid highways of comfort through otherwise bone-chilling seas. The Gulf Stream became their best friend. This massive river of warm water flows north along the American coast, and pirates who knew how to catch it could sail in relative luxury while their competitors turned into popsicles just a few miles away. It's like having a heated swimming pool running through your backyard, except your backyard is the entire Atlantic Ocean. But here's where it gets clever. These weren't just lucky accidents. Experienced pirates developed an almost supernatural ability to spot warm currents. They'd watch for subtle changes in water color. Warm currents often appeared slightly darker or clearer. They noticed how seabirds behaved differently over warm water, diving more frequently because fish preferred these cozy underwater neighborhoods too. The really sharp captains kept detailed mental notes about seasonal patterns. They knew that certain currents shifted strength throughout the year, like a maritime version of checking the weather forecast. This knowledge became more valuable than any stolen gold because it meant the difference between a crew that could function and one that spent the voyage shivering like wet chihuahuas. Smart navigation also meant avoiding the notorious cold zones. The Labrador Current, for instance, carries Arctic water south along Canada's coast. Pirates learned to steer clear of this liquid ice maker like avoiding your mother-in-law at family gatherings. This strategy had bonus benefits beyond just comfort. Warm currents supported more marine life, which meant better fishing opportunities. When your food supplies are running low and you're already dealing with cold weather, having fresh fish available feels like winning the lottery. The navigation skills required were impressive by any standard. Without modern instruments, these sailors had to rely on water temperature, wind patterns, and even the taste of seawater to find their liquid lifelines. They became human GPS systems calibrated to comfort. What's really fascinating is how this knowledge intersected with their other survival tricks, creating a complete system that would make even today's survival experts raise an eyebrow in respect. Here's something that'll make modern survival experts scratch their heads. Pirates figured out tricks that took science centuries to officially recognize. Take their rainwater collection system. While landlubbers were drinking questionable well water, pirates stretched their sails at precise angles to funnel every drop of rain into barrels. They positioned canvas like giant funnels, creating what amounted to floating water factories. The clever part? They knew which sections of sail caught the cleanest water, avoiding areas where bird droppings or salt spray contaminated the flow. But wait, it gets better. Pirates turned ordinary rope into life-saving insulation. They'd weave thick rope into mats, creating surprisingly effective windbreaks that could mean the difference between frostbite and survival. These weren't fancy survival blankets, just twisted hemp doing double duty. Modern military actually studied these techniques during World War II. Then there's their human heating system. Pirates mastered what scientists now call thermal regulation through group dynamics. Sounds fancy, right? Really, it just meant they figured out the perfect way to huddle without cutting off circulation. Two pirates back to back, sharing body heat while keeping watch. Smart as a fox, twice as practical. The navigation tricks still amaze meteorologists today. Pirates could read wave patterns bouncing off distant islands, even in thick fog. They'd feel vibrations through the ship's hull that revealed land masses miles away. One old salt could tell you exactly where the nearest island sat just by watching how seabirds flew overhead. Here's where it gets really wild. Pirates developed a rotation system for staying warm that modern Arctic researchers still use. Every 30 minutes, crew members would switch positions, moving from exposed deckwork to sheltered areas below. This prevented anyone from getting too cold while keeping essential tasks running smoothly. And their weather prediction? Absolutely uncanny. They'd watch how dolphins behaved, notice subtle color changes in seawater, and read cloud formations like newspapers. These guys could predict storms 3 days out without a single instrument. The weirdest part is their improvised signaling methods. Pirates would polish sword blades or belt buckles into makeshift mirrors, bouncing sunlight across vast distances to communicate with other ships. When fog rolled in, they'd burn specific materials to create different colored smoke signals. What's fascinating is how these rough and tumble sailors developed techniques that modern survival manuals teach today. They just called it not dying at sea, instead of giving it fancy scientific names. These innovations weren't accidents. They were born from necessity, refined through trial and error, and passed down through generations of seafaring rogues who valued results over reputation.